Now, let's just talk about the power struggle stage for a little bit, because it's probably the most difficult one, and it's the one where most relationships end. And that's why I think understanding these 3 stages of relationships is really crucial for single people, because if you don't know that the power struggle stage is coming, you will very easily assume that there's something wrong with the relationship, or probably more likely something wrong with the person that's lying next to you in your bed.
Right.
And you'll break up with them thinking relationships shouldn't be this hard. That's probably the most common phrase I hear from my clients. Relationships shouldn't be this hard. I'm like, yeah, they're not that hard when you're in the romance stage, and they won't be that hard in the 3rd stage either. You're just in the power struggle, which is where it's meant to be hard, because the 2 of you are figuring out how to be together. And if you don't know this, you'll assume that your relationship's flawed, or your partner's flawed, or perhaps even you're flawed, and you'll break up with each other and the relationship will end. In fact, most relationships do end in the power struggle stage, because in the romance stage, it's rare that they end because you're high on drugs. In the next stage, after the power struggle stage, it's rare that they end because you've gotten through most of your conflict and you're happy together. So it's the power struggle stage you want to be aware of and look out for and expect, and almost celebrate and welcome when it arrives as, okay, we've graduated. Now we're teenagers. We're no longer toddlers. We're in the teenage stage. Now, you know how teenage years are. They're not easy. And that's what the power struggle stage is the equivalent of. Your relationship's teenage years. You're going to be figuring things out. It's going to be a ton of conflict. Or if you're like some couples, there's going to be 0 conflict. And the number 1 predictor of divorce, according to Dr. John Gottman, is the absence of conflict. So 0 conflict is as bad as, conflict every day and constant fighting. And the reason is that if you're not fighting, you're not resolving your differences, you're not talking about what's going on. And so eventually it'll explode. All of that repressed, pushed down emotion and differences will suddenly come up like a volcano. You will have a massive fight and the relationship will break up and end right there and then. And one of you will be left thinking, what the heck just happened? Where did this come from? How did this relationship go from being head over heels in love to suddenly I'm single again? And that's because you weren't expecting the power struggle stage and you weren't talking about what was coming up in the relationship during the power struggle stage. So,
and that's probably because at least one person in the power struggle stage maybe did lose their identity, or they were too afraid to express what was going on, or too disillusioned or something. They couldn't express it. And then it builds up inside and then all of a sudden blows like a volcano, right?
Exactly. And it's often the more withdrawn, reserved, avoidant man, or a partner who's people pleasing. Those 2 types are the most prone to not express their needs. The reserved, withdrawn, kind of emotionally shut down person tends to be afraid of intimacy. They're afraid of opening up Pandora's box. They've spent their entire life not talking about their feelings. So why would they start now? And, it's often the woman who's pushing them to kind of talk about what's going on. And the man's like, no, thank you. Nope, not going there. Nope. Until eventually, there's so much conflict that he goes, I can't do this anymore, and he leaves. Or she's just like, I can't deal with you anymore. I'm out of here. Or the people-pleasing one who tries to deal with conflict by saying yes when they mean no, or by appeasing their partner to try and make them happy rather than talking about what's authentically going on inside of them. That person eventually wakes up and go, I don't know who I am anymore, because I've said yes so many times when I meant no that I don't even know what this relationship is anymore. So those are things to look out for. And a lot of what I do with my couples in the power struggle stage is teach them how to talk about what's going on in a safe, kind way without things escalating into volcanic eruptions and, the shit hitting the fan, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So if you're lucky enough to make it through the power struggle stage, you emerge as a couple interdependent. Okay, so interdependent means you're able to be healthily dependent on each other when you need to be, and also be autonomous and independent. And it's this flexible move of the 2 of you coming together and separating, and coming together and separating. This could be hour by hour, or day by day, or week by week, or season by season. But when your partner needs you, you're there. And you're there for them. And then when you need them, they're there for you. And you're able to be a couple, and you're also able to have your own individual lives. So on the macro, what this might look like is, my wife and I wake up in the morning And we are literally like physically like this. We're clinging to each other. That's how we sleep to each other. We're clinging to each other. The morning we wake up, we have coffee together, and then we separate for the day. As I go about my work and she goes about her work, she's a chef. I help couples. And then somewhere around about 5 or 6 in the afternoon, we come back together again. And then she'll go off. Last night she went out to dinner with some of her friends, and I stayed at home and watched Netflix, which was wonderful. And then we come back together again, and it's this kind of flex and flow. Or there might be times where, for 3 or 4 months, I'm kind of alone as I'm visiting my 85-year-old mom who lives in South Africa, where I'm originally from. And last year I went away for 3 months, and we were apart for 3 months because I was afraid my mom might get COVID and suddenly pass away. And I wanted to see her because she's old. And my wife couldn't get a visa to come visit with me to South Africa. So we were apart for 3 months. And then when we came together, we went on a road trip and we spent lots of time together because we'd missed each other. These are the natural flex and flow of the mature love stage. And the separation in the mature love stage, which is the name of the third stage. Sorry, I didn't mention it, the mature love stage. The separation is not a threat in the mature love stage. In the romance stage, separation is a threat. Okay. And in the power struggle stage, you're trying to come together, but for one partner, often coming together is a threat. The more withdrawn partner wants to kind of retreat and withdraw, and the other partner chases them. And that part is the threat. In the mature love stage, you're able to be together and apart, and both are wonderful. Your conflict has been resolved. You don't fight about things anymore. You may argue and disagree, but it doesn't escalate into blowout fights where both of you are left hurt, feeling alone or sad or distant from each other and sleeping in separate sides of the bed or in a different room. That doesn't happen anymore. And in the mature love stage, one of the characteristics is that the couple often end up working on a joint project together that makes the world or their community a better place. This could be starting a business together. It could be having a baby. It could be starting a school. It could be traveling the world together. It's different for everybody. And the key ingredient of this project is that it's born out of being together. Usually it's not one person's idea that they had way before the couple became a couple. The idea came because of being a couple. Through going through the power struggle stage and their life together and living together, they realized that their coupledom has given birth to almost like a third entity, the relationship. And so now you've got partner A, partner B, and this third entity, their relationship, which is almost like the baby that they gave birth to, metaphorically speaking. And this baby has its own life and its own goals and its own gift to give to the world. And when the couple enter the mature love stage, this is often a natural progression. Their relationship gives back in some way, shape, or form. It might be small, it might be large, it might be on a local scale or a global scale, but it's a trait. You don't really get to the mature love stage unless you've been together for at least 5 years, I would have thought, on average. And being together 30 years doesn't guarantee you've made it to the mature love stage. You can stay stuck in the power struggle stage 20, 30 years, and often my clients have been. And they're desperate by the time they come to me. They've been fighting and they've never managed to get that stable place in their relationship. Conflict ends for a while, but it always comes back because they're not resolving what comes up. So that's the first big idea, that I think it's important that every single person know to expect the power struggle and to know what's required when you get into the power struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So do you feel like it's important? So, for example, my husband and I have been married for 15 years. I definitely remember the romance stage, the falling in love stage. I definitely remember sort of the power struggle when all of a sudden we're like, oh, maybe you're not quite so perfect as I thought. But I do feel like we've been able to work through that and transcend that, and that we're in the, what do you call the third stage, the couple stage? The
mature love stage.
Mature love stage.
Mm-hmm.
So for couples, though, that are kind of in the early stage, they're like in the romance stage, what do you suggest to kind of like prepare them for the upcoming struggle stage, power struggle stage? And how do they talk about that? Because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, how do you bring that up? We're madly in love right now, but 6 months from now, you might notice my toes are big and that I have whatever, right? Well, this flower.
So that's such a great question. And I think a lot of the preparation cannot be done in the romance stage because the problems haven't arisen yet and you don't know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
So you almost need to wait until a power struggle happens. But what you can do to prepare yourselves is learn the skills for dealing with conflict before conflict emerges, so that when conflict inevitably does emerge, you're prepared. You know what to do. And so these skills are skills I teach in all my courses. They're connection skills, how to stay emotionally connected when the drugs wear off. They're communication skills, which is divided into two fundamental categories. One, how to speak so that your partner doesn't feel threatened. And two, how to listen so your partner feels heard and understood. So you need to learn connection skills and then communication skills. Then you need to learn how to resolve conflict, what the process is to go through to talk about what's going on, discovering your needs, discovering your values, how to communicate about them in a way that doesn't occur as a threat, and then how to resolve conflict. And then finally, I think the fourth key critical skill is how to restore trust when inevitably you disappoint each other, betray each other, hurt each other. How do you repair to get back on the same page again? And that can all be done beforehand. The actual content, you can't really talk about too much because you won't know what it is unless you've done this plenty of times before in a previous relationship and you're self-aware and you know yourself inside out and you know your relationship stuff. You can share that. The chances are your partner won't. So, yeah.